I would suggest that, yes, there absolutely is suppression on Gaza, but that also goes beyond that into like a broader like shutting down of leftist issues.
The thing that I want everyone to recognize from all this, and why I think this is to be honest, but it was one of those things where I know myself and a lot of the other, people in the online left were constantly trying to beg for the love of, and this is internationally, mind you, content creators in other countries as well, like myself coming from Canada, trying to beg the goddamn Democrats to see the writing on the wall, because American voters are making their thoughts on this very, very loud. If you didn't watch The Leftist Mafia, you should. It's a great show. Features a bunch of great panelists. I'm usually on there, but I actually had to leave for some family stuff. And then last weekend on Thursday, there was a big debate that went down between a whole bunch of different people in relation to the article that came out by Taylor Lorenz on the Wired, and speaking out against Chorus, and how Chorus is funded by a dark money group that has associations with the Democrats. And obviously that has been a source of controversy for the last couple weeks online. And I've had time to stew on the entire story, and I have still reached a lot of the same conclusions that I had originally when the story came out. I think that, well, you can criticize Taylor Lorenz's behavior, and certainly her behavior towards Ariana, or her, behavior towards Jessica. That is completely independent of her reporting. And honestly, I'm not a journalist. I don't write, well-researched articles that get published in very esteemed publications on a regular basis. If I was, and I did, I think a lot of people would be able to also go and call out a lot of the stuff that I do online as also being sometimes silly and wild, because I am silly and wild online. And I can't just use the cover of being like, well, ultimately I'm just a clown man on the internet, so it doesn't matter what I say or do. It does. I have a reach. I have people who watch me. There's over 700 people watching me live right now, and there'll probably be more on the Serf Times later. So as much as I want to use that as a defense, well, I'm not a real journalist, I'm a comedian, so I get to hide behind that. No, even if you are a comedian or whatever, you're still responsible for, the kind of things that you say and you put out there. But that being said, I still think that the article itself was very well researched, and like the criticism that has come out against the Wild article being that, like, Taylor Lorenz hasn't revealed her sources. Taylor Lorenz is refusing to do that. Taylor Lorenz is refusing to show the contracts and stuff. She doesn't have to. That's not how this works. Please. Again, I know I'm a clown man on the internet, but we are completely fine with accepting people protecting their sources in every other case except for this one. Why is this the one instance where all of a sudden it's like she should have to reveal the contracts and we should see the truth? And it's like, the Wired legal team reviewed the contents. The Wired legal team went over the article. The editorial team, their legal went over it, because they don't want to put themselves open to potential lawsuits. So that should be enough for you. I would say the same thing, and I did when it came to the Washington Post story about Donald Trump's letter to Jeffrey Epstein. When it's like, hey, by the way, this article came out, it seems that Donald Trump wrote this really weird ode to pedophiles fucking love poem to Jeffrey Epstein, and then he also drew a picture and then signed a naked lady with his like signature on her pubis and all this other shit like that. I don't need to literally see the naked pubic hair Donald Trump signature to believe that story is true, because it's the Washington Post, and I know they have a legal team and an editorial team who would have had to go over it. There's so many things that you can accuse that article of doing. You could say, well, I think it has bias, or I think it is bringing attention to this one thing. Yes, it does. It has framing. That's what articles have. This is just a result of the English language narrative and human beings writing stories. It will frame something, and it has a purpose, and it wants you to read and get this information out of the article. There's no way to be a 100% NPC. I have absolutely zero opinions, and I make stories that have absolutely zero bias, and I make stories that will just basically only tell raw facts. I only tell no, again, stories will have a purpose behind the story, and in the case of that story, there was a purpose behind it, but you can't keep going after Taylor Lorenz and simply attacking Taylor Lorenz, as a lot of weird people on the internet have been doing, simply because she doesn't reveal the contracts or hasn't published the contracts. Like, again, that shit, we don't apply these levels of standards to other stories where we are very happy that this information is coming out because we know how the system works. And I thought, at least, I'm still seeing people be like, how dare she, and stuff like that. All that notwithstanding, I think it's also true that for the smaller content creators who had decided to join on or sign up for Chorus, there's a huge difference between someone who is making already well over $100,000 a year and then is getting $8,000 plus from this organization, this nonprofit Chorus, to be able to toe a party line or be able to promote a Democratic Party over a Republican Party or whatever the case may be. These are completely different things, and I just want to be completely clear. Like, when you're starting out, when you're a little baby and you only have either 1,000 or 10, even 10,000 followers, which I think is where like certain countries denote that you are now officially legally an influencer or whatever the case may be, right? When you're starting out, of course, the idea of a pilot program in many cases could be a fucking miracle. If you're like, oh my God, I want to make it in this really difficult and competitive world of being a leftist or liberal influencer, aka I want to talk about politics for a living and make snappy TikTok videos or YouTube video essays or documentaries, right? If you had a program come along and be like, hey, we're an incubator program and we can help you, and as a result of us being a much larger collective of people, you're gonna have to sign a predatory contract. And I don't use that as in that term lightly. That's how these things work. That's why it was not a surprise to me to find out that this was a thing that was in place. Again, having dealt with contracts for a very long time and having dealt with media when I was working as a digital distributor, as working for a special effects company as well, this was a very commonplace thing where if you had a larger media apparatus and they were trying to sign on some smaller property, they knew that they would have a position of power, and in a position of power you can make a very aggressive contract that obviously puts you and protects you and your company way more than it benefits the other person. That's how these things work. And again, these things also will probably demand things of you, and once this stuff got revealed, it should be kind of like less of a shock. It wasn't even, I would say, the most bombshell story ever until the response from it was getting so weird from people like Brian Taylor Cohen and David Pakman coming out and being like, these are people who want us to lose. This article's been debunked. It was never debunked. This is, an attack. David Pakman is apparently thinking of doing a lawsuit right now against Wired, but he's contemplating it. He's just putting it out there. All this kind of stuff. That shit looks shady as fuck. And it is also something that people should be honest about. If you have to sign a contract, right, or you make people sign a contract, I put way more onus on the people at the top, as always. I think really small streamers who sign this kind of stuff, like, I don't think they should be the ones getting the hate, especially ones who didn't have to change their editorializing, or ones who were speaking up very vocally about Palestine, about the genocide in Gaza, stuff like that. Like, they shouldn't be the ones that people hyper-focus on. You should be hyper-focusing on a company that is trying to make people fall under this set of guidelines, where it's like, you can't talk about this. You can't tell other people that you had to sign these specific terms in your contract. You can't talk shit about other members of Chorus, specifically the ones at the high end, blah, blah, blah. Well, that to me feels like you're kind of also setting up a network to kind of secure the ability for people to criticize other people in a program where they might have legitimate criticism of them. Maybe people might have had criticisms of David Pakman's complete lack of speaking up for Palestinians or the genocide that was happening to them, or spreading Hasbara, or spreading pro-Israeli talking points for propaganda, as he was doing with that video that is still up on his Twitter regarding the hospitals and the bombing of hospitals and stuff like that, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff where it's kind of like, that sucks, and it sucks that a company would have been trying to do that while at the same time promoting the idea that this is just a wholesome incubator program that's just trying to help out smaller creators, just trying to help push people up. I have nothing against a program that is trying to help smaller creators. I myself have tried to help smaller creators in one way or another throughout my Serf experience, and in some ways they've been successful, in some ways I've created monsters. But like, in a lot of ways it's kind of like, it's really hard to be like, oh, I'm just going to have an open door program, if you will, where anyone who wants to, if you're a smaller leftist creator, I usually specify leftist, just send me a little trailer. I'll put it into my own videos and I'll promote you. And doing that for a while, or trying to do that in my live streams, or trying to do that at the start of the videos, or whatever it was, eventually led to people then getting mad at me after a year's time, being like, hey, by the way, this smaller leftist creator you had promoted in one of your videos, Lance, turns out to be a tanky, and he's turning out to be spouting some really fucking shitty ass pro Putin bullshit. And I'm like, oh, seriously? That sucks, because at the time they were just like, I'm a Marxist and I care a lot about labor exploitation, ending all unjust hierarchies. I'll go look back. I have to go now unlist that video or whatever it is. I'm sorry. And those are the kind of like pitfalls that you can fall into. So I understand if you were not only doing that as a, like, I'm still in the scheme of things a smaller creator, right? If you're doing that as a giant company, the way that Chorus was trying to do, I understand why Chorus, especially if they were trying to get investment capital, would have had to put forward contracts. I also said that. I also said, like, I understand if you were setting up, even if it's a nonprofit, by the way, I think sometimes the term nonprofit fools people into thinking that there's like not a lot of money to be had in those kind of companies. You just can't show at the end of the year that you've produced a profit, but you can pay out your CEOs vast amounts of money or your staff vast amounts of money just so long as the company itself isn't producing a profit every single year. But that notwithstanding, I understand if you're trying to get a lot of capital from, if it's a dark money group or an investment or something like that, especially if they have ties to political parties or people who want to have ties to political parties or people who have previously funded or invested in political parties or political movements, then they're going to want to have an ROI. They're going to want to have some protection and security. And then if you have a large scale program like Chorus, they're going to want to set it up so that, yeah, we can provide that for you. If you want to invest $1 million, $2 million in our company or in a seed fund that is going to help fund the company, don't worry. We have contracts that make sure that the following stipulations can be had and held and stuff like that. And this completely getting revealed to the world again, I think would have been so much more of a nothing burger if the pushback wasn't as wild as it has been, where I'm just like, this is just again, nuts to see, but here we are. So on Current Affairs, one of David Pakman's ex-producers came on to talk about an off-the-record meeting featuring Brian Taylor Cohen, where they discussed what their editorial stance on Gaza was going to be, which I guess probably helps explain a lot of shit that a lot of people were wondering for so long.
It absolutely is deliberate. I actually have an email from him after he visited the White House last year on the day of Joe Biden's State of the Union address. He was invited to a private off-the-record meeting with Kamala Harris and several other content creators, including Brian Tyler Cohen, the Mycelis brothers from Midas Touch, and he told me that they all sort of talked amongst themselves at the White House, not in like an official capacity during the meeting, but, you know, just casually as colleagues amongst themselves. And they talked about what their editorial stance is on Gaza. And he told me in an email that they talked amongst themselves and came to the conclusion that the topic is too divisive, it might drag down their channels, that it's a poison pill, and that it's better if they just don't talk about it at all. Now, Brian Tyler Cohen literally has never done anything on Gaza. Beyond that, during the 2020 primary, even though he was regularly putting out videos covering news and politics, never once mentioned Bernie Sanders during the 2020 primary. And we see today with this rise of Zoran Mamdani, has Brian Tyler Cohen covered him? No, not at all. So I would suggest that, yes, there absolutely is suppression on Gaza, but there also goes beyond that to like a broader like shutting down of leftist issues. If you are a content...
Now, the thing that I want everyone to recognize from all this and why I think this is fucked, to be honest, like not only morally reprehensible, that this is something that obviously would have been discussed amongst other liberal content creators, liberals specifically, to be like, we shouldn't mention this, it's a poison pill, it's just a bad thing, let's not talk about, you know, the genocide of Palestinians, let's not bring this up, it's just going to be very negative. But it was one of those things where I know myself and a lot of the other, you know, people in the online left were constantly trying to beg, for the love of fuck, and this is internationally, mind you, content creators in other countries as well, like myself coming from Canada, trying to beg the goddamn Democrats to see the writing on the wall, because American voters are making their thoughts on this very, very loud. There is an entire movement called the Uncommitted Movement that is trying to demonstrate to you that there is not only a few, but a very significant, and in some states, proportional amount of people who are stating that this is a line for them, that this is important to them, that this matters to them, that they no longer are willing to support a party or a candidate that has any involvement in this, or at the very least is not willing to offer something better than the other side is. And you cannot just simply say, throw away lines. You can't simply say, I will not be silent. Then when someone brings it up, say, I'm speaking. You can't simply say, well, I agree wholeheartedly with Israel's right to defend itself. I'm going to do the same package lines now. October 7th was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is one of the strongest and key allies of the United States. Again, they have a right to defend themselves. I believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. When you're doing all of this, and this is your messaging, and this is what you're putting out there, you're going to really struggle in an election where, again, the stakes are so high. You could have a full-blown fucking Hitler-quoting fascist come to power. It is crucial that you don't take chances on this shit, and you don't risk stuff. For what? To support a nation doing a genocide, you need to cut the cord. This is an absolute death cult. And yes, it could result in Donald Trump getting elected. And if he gets elected, good God, will things be even worse for the Palestinian people? Everyone recognizes this, but I see the math. And the writing on the wall, which is clearly being demonstrated by a large portion of the American electorate, is that people are not going to show up. They're either not going to show up, they're not going to vote. People who voted previously for Joe Biden are not going to come out and vote for Kamala Harris as long as she is not taking a very strong position on this, or at least giving the uncommitted movement anything. They had enough delegates to go to the DNC, but they're not allowed to speak. They're being shunned. They're protesting outside in tears, asking to be listened to, begging, goddamn begging. This is a mess. It's a mess, and this mess is going to result in giving yet another advantage to Donald Trump when you should be doing everything in your power. If this is the most important election of a lifetime, like you say you believe, if you genuinely believe in the word fascist and what that implies, you should at this moment in time be doing everything in your power to stop it. And that includes not supporting a fascistic far-right government doing a genocide. That shouldn't be a tough calculation. This shouldn't be a difficult thing. If you're like, we're going to fight fascism domestically, the far right domestically, well then maybe you shouldn't be arming it internationally as they are committing a genocide before the eyes of the world. That is going to have a devastating effect on this election. And yes, I'm sorry, the youth of this country, a percentage of them are not going to be able to want to participate in this. Not even like the youth, like just a percentage of American voters who otherwise would have been voting for your party or supporting your party are going to just say, I'm sorry, I either can't show up, or I'm voting uncommitted, or I'm doing a write-in, or I'm just not going to participate in this, because it's just too fucking devastating to me. I'm tired. And you can say and shame them like a lot of these same people were and still do. The Olivia Giulianas of the world are the same people who are just like, if you're not willing to get up and vote for the Democrats, you're a Trump supporter. Shame on you. I'm going to vote shame you. If you're not willing at this point to realize that Trump was worse, or even like now flaunting, like, haha, told you so. Look how bad Trump is on Palestine. Look how much worse things are. They're going to fucking exterminate all the people there, mass starve them to death, and then they're going to turn it into a casino resort. Hope you're happy. Haha, fafo. Haha, fafo. This is sick. It's grotesque. It's honestly, it's madness because like this helped Donald Trump. This was a gift to Donald Trump. You alienated a large portion of your base doing this. This wasn't in any way fighting on the other side by being like, we have to toe the line by being very clear, not talking about Gaza, not talking about Palestine, saying that we support Israel, saying that we support Israel's right to defend itself. That's the direction we have to go in here, because amongst the people who do not support what Israel's doing, they're on the left side of the aisle, and that includes Jewish supporters who were constantly being weaponized, who were constantly being used as some kind of pawn in all of this. Oh, what are you, anti-Semitic? Do you not support Jewish people? Well, what about the Jewish people who do not support Israel? Like, again, those people are going to be found in the same camps who would, if there's one of two choices, all right? Yes, that faction, you need a big tent, but that faction is going to be made up of a lot of different groups, and one of those groups are people who are going to be on the left, are people who are going to be progressive, are people who are going to be like, I sure as fuck ain't voting for Donald Trump. And it's like, all right, well then, trolley problem, do the calculation. It's right before your eyes. You can see the two options. You get two choices, all right? Either you turn the lever left or right. And you know what happens? If you don't touch the lever at all, then the trolley will just go through. Also, do the calculation, all right? I was like, that's not enough. You don't win elections by fucking condescending to people you should know better. You don't win elections by being like, I am the lesser evil. I am the less horrifying. I am genocide light. You got genocide or genocide light. Do you want to see how bad things can be? Fucking don't vote or vote for the other guy. That's all I'll say. It was a horrifying calculation and a devastating one, and one in which, after the fact, now we do have data to back up the fact that there was a large percentage of people when polled who stated the reason why they voted for Joe Biden but could not vote for Kamala Harris was specifically on this issue. There is a significant percentage of people who again could not participate as a result of this. So this not only was a disaster from a moral standing, and that's why I'm like, it is a reprehensible thing to have done, but it is a disaster from a strategic and a voter strategy position, because again, this is something that alienated so many potential people from being able to support the Democrats.
Creator, and you have a platform of 3 million, 4 million people, and it's your job to analyze news and politics for a living, and yet you don't ever mention Gaza. It's like, I just don't understand how you would be able to sleep with yourself at night. I certainly wasn't able to when I worked for him. To be honest, I sort of feel like I have blood on my hands, or it's like he has this audience of 3 million people who are, broadly moderate, centristy, liberal types who, theoretically, if they did hear about what was happening there, then, they might have been more critical of Biden. There might have been potential to pressure him and change his policy on it. But because it was shut out entirely, it became much less present in the public discourse around a certain type of person who isn't getting their news from actual journalists, but paid shills for the Democratic Party.
And that fucking sucks. Like, it's again, it's so sad, because I recall when the uncommitted movement was just showing the numbers, there was enough data to demonstrate that this movement, has the numbers and has shown itself to be, effective enough that you have to make a choice. It's either support Israel or don't support a far-right government doing a genocide and have a much better shot at winning the election. And the Democrats decided, no, but you will make the right choice. You will do the trolley problem. You will, in your heart of hearts, when it comes down to it, understand the stakes are too high, most important election of a lifetime, so we don't need to change course. We don't need to talk about this, and we don't need to acknowledge what a lot of people may be thinking when they see dead children every single day on their timelines. We are, like, honestly, our ability to be the better choice is going to be stronger, more effective, and better branding. We got Beyonce, we got Eminem. Come on, you've seen the Sphere, the Globe in Vegas. We got the Demure Brat fucking summer shit. We got all of that, all right? The coconut tree, we are living amongst it. So that alone is going to be more powerful than the images you are seeing every single day that is causing depression, that is causing anxiety, that is causing people to cry for no reason at the middle of the day and wonder why they're so fucked up and sad all the time, because all of a sudden the grotesquerie of a reality that we're living through yet another genocide, yet another fucking genocide, and seeing it and having those images buried into our skulls all day. Well, guess what? A lot of people who consume the majority of their media online, such as TikTok, happen to be younger voters. That's going to be a really hard calculation for them to make. If you're thinking about it that way, if you're expecting every single one of them to be like, I am really upset about seeing again all those dead and shattered children's bones, but I understand the stakes, and I have the trolley problem this one, and I'm going to do it, and it's fucked up, but like that's what happened. I forgot about the Sphere. Yeah, goddamn that Sphere. How expensive was that Sphere? Like, it was like $250,000, I think, for like 2 weeks of Sphere. And how many votes did that win, right? That's like the other maddening thing about all this is that, like, when you have an apparatus like this, when you have a corporation, it's a company, right? The Democratic Party is a company that is well fucking generating vast amounts of revenue in the form of donations, and then and additionally, supplementally, to support your messaging, you will have things like super PACs, and then in addition to that, you also have lobbying and lobbyist groups. All of that, there's so much money coming into it. How many people did you win with the Vegas Sphere? Showing the coconut memes and all that kind of stuff, versus if you had spent $250,000 doing something, I don't know, dramatic, like, say, housing veterans. What if you did that? Like, I'm not even saying you have to house the unhoused, because that alone will have people be like, oh, what is this, socialism? What if you did something that is very popular by both the right and the left? You spent $250 million, not on a sphere, but on housing every single veteran who doesn't have a house. You just did a $250 million development program, and then boom, put that out there, advertised it, spread it all around, did all that. Do you think that would have won over more voters than just seeing the orb? Or however much money it costs to book Slim Shady. I don't know what his booking fee was, but to bring Slim Shady on so they can, talk in Detroit, whatever that fee was, what if he built a whole bunch of housing projects in Detroit? Whatever the cost was, whatever it cost to bring on Marshall Mathers and have him speak there and give a little speech at that one thing, because yes, they do have speaking fucking engagement fees. Whatever that was, what if you built some housing projects in Detroit? Probably would have won a lot of people over. Probably would have had a lot of people go, damn, who did that? The election campaign for Kamala Harris. It was part of her campaign strategy is apparently to start building housing projects. So here we are. It's sad,
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwig, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons.